Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're all doing well and keeping safe wherever you're watching this. Going to be talking about two players in today's video, both fitness related, Edouard Mendy and Hakim Ziyech, both returning early from international duty last week, but for different reasons. And I think they're both interesting to talk about in relation to the weekend's game against Southampton. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content because it helps out the channel as well. So let's start off with Edouard Mendy. This story broke last week, which I'm pretty sure all of you saw, that Mendy returned early to London from duty with Senegal last week, getting injured, a thigh injury. This initially reported by Simon Johnson in The Athletic, as you can see here. Keeper Edouard Mendy is optimistic he'll be ruled out for a maximum of just 2 weeks after suffering an injury while on international duty with Senegal, reports Simon Johnson. Mendy flew back to London and went to Cobham to be assessed by the club's medical department. Now, when we first saw this, I think most of us had like a heart attack, thinking about sort of last season, the injury crisis of last season, and even this season, waiting for players to be back fit for the games and not having a fully fit squad. And someone tweeted, I think it was The Score on Twitter, an account I follow, but I just posted this after the Mendy news broke, that the last time Chelsea had a fully fit squad going into a game was April of 2019 at home to Burnley in the Premier League, the 2-2 draw. And if you remember that game, we didn't have a fully fit squad for too long because Callum Hudson-Odoi, of course, ruptured his Achilles tendon in that game, and also Kante was forced off injured, and that, I believe, was the start of his injury that then went on to next season, 1920, where we lost him for a lot of the season last year, barely played. So it's been a difficult thing for Chelsea, injuries, and it's been a massive concern. I think this relates to Ziyech, who I'm going to talk about after this, but in relation to Edouard Mendy, of course, it's such a problem position for Chelsea that needs to be rectified and improved upon after last season. And there is that concern, especially consistency, because defensively and just in terms of the team, but I think about the back five, the four in defence and in goal, that consistency that we've lacked over the past year under Frank Lampard, and sort of thinking about having that this season, having a more stable and certain back four. Maybe, there's a bit of rotation there with bringing in Reece James potentially for Dave. I think there's going to be a tussle there. We just didn't have that last year. You couldn't name the best sort of 11, but especially defence, and I think Mendy hopefully will be a big part of that. I mean, defensively we were so solid and resolute against Palace. They didn't offer a lot, but I think based on Chelsea's defensive performances over the last year, I think you have to be impressed by that defensive performance, and I think Frank will want to stick with that, especially the outfield players. Now, in terms of how serious the injury is, there's been a lot of reports floating around today, and there were reports instantly when he returned to Cobham. We saw a picture of him at Cobham being treated for his injury, that it wasn't as serious and it wasn't as severe as initially first thought, which was good. But now it seems, as Dan McCarthy here, brilliant account that I suggest you go and follow on Twitter, that as you may have seen by many now, as he says here, Mendy has a better chance of being fully fit for Southampton. Key days ahead, hopefully he trains in the coming days, and that's brilliant news, it really is. And even if he isn't fully fit for the game against Southampton, hopefully he'll be ready for the game against Sevilla in the Champions League when the group stage kicks off next week. It's such a big position for Chelsea, and you hope with Mendy coming into the Premier League, being a Chelsea goalkeeper, getting used to being at Chelsea, building that chemistry, I think is going to be so important with his fellow defenders this year. And you hope if he could play on Saturday, potentially not rushing him back, but if he's fit for the game, brilliant, to really start to gain that chemistry and gain that understanding with the likes of Thiago Silva, Kurt Zouma, Ben Chilwell, Dave, and maybe Reece James coming back in there as well. It's going to be a challenge, I'm sure, for Frank Lampard, and I think consistency this year will of course be a challenge, I think, generally, because you worry about injuries with these international breaks. How relevant and how necessary are these international breaks this year? I just wonder, because it's Nations League, it's not main qualifying for, say, the Euros or the World Cup, and it has been brought up with the congested fixtures this year, the fixture list, where the wear and tear on players and sort of the fatigue over a season. I do worry, not only in terms of the quality of the football we're going to be getting in the Premier League post-Christmas, say we get to February, March, the amount of football now and the quality of the football may get a little bit more sharper as players get back to full fitness, especially teams like Chelsea who didn't have a full pre-season. I just worry by the time we get to the Euros, and in a normal year when we have a major tournament, there's always that concern that players look fatigued by the time they get to a major tournament. Will it be even worse next year at the Euros? That's a concern for me. And as well, with COVID floating around, and players having to self-isolate, testing positive, you just wonder how that's going to impact squads in terms of availability, having a fully fit squad. But in terms of Mendy, it's so important he's available this season, so important we can rectify the problem area of last year and improve on that area. But then if he isn't ready for the game, then it's between Kepa and Caballero. And I'm going to pass it over to you guys. If Mendy isn't fit for the weekend, who goes in goal? Who do you think Frank Lampard would choose? Frank Lampard will confirm, I'm sure, Mendy's availability for the weekend in his pre-match press conference on Thursday or Friday, so we'll have to wait till then. But please let me know your opinions on this whole situation in the comments below. And lastly, before we wrap up, just want to talk about Hakim Ziyech as well, because Ziyech returned early from international duty with Morocco, a bit like Mendy, but for different reasons. As you can see here, this tweet, Hakim Ziyech is on his way back to London as agreed between Chelsea and the Moroccan Football Federation following a 30-minute cameo against Senegal. Frank Lampard wanted Ziyech to return for day-to-day assessment, expecting to have him ready for Southampton next week. So Mendy could have played in that game, but of course, I think he'd returned to England by that point. But in terms of Ziyech, it was a really good cameo. He got an assist, a lovely assist, a left-footed curler from a free kick into the box, perfect. And hopefully that's something we will see in the Premier League at Stamford Bridge very soon. But I think this is good, and I think this is great planning by Chelsea. I've said this on the channel before in relation to injuries. Chelsea maybe being a little bit more cautious this year in terms of throwing important players back into the fire in terms of Premier League football or just first team football and really managing them well. I think there was a sense maybe at times last year with certain players returning from injury, key players, that maybe we threw them in too soon and they got re-injured and then we missed them for, say, a few more weeks or months in some cases. And I don't mind our medical team, or just Lampard and the coaching staff, being more cautious with these players, because it's a long season. We're going to need these important players if we're going to have a successful year. And Ziyech, I think, is going to be a massive part of that, especially creatively for Chelsea. So I have no problem with that. There's been questions, and I got a question earlier on today in my added time episode. Definitely go and check out that video where I answered about sort of, do I think he's going to start Ziyech at the weekend? I don't expect him to, because I think if he's only getting 30 minutes on for Morocco last week, and sort of him playing that game, only getting 30 minutes and then returning for more assessment at Cobham, I expect he'll be in the squad. So I think a bit like Pulisic against Palace, he'll come off the bench maybe for 20 to 30 minutes to get him that fitness up as well. I think it could be sort of just Pulisic part 2 basically. Ziyech comes on later in the game, gets those minutes in his legs, and then of course you've got the Sevilla game. There's so many games coming up for Chelsea, really packed area of a lot of games where I think Ziyech will break into the starting 11. We'll be starting games very soon, but it's so exciting to see Ziyech finally make his debut for Chelsea. I think that creativity, that link up we saw in that Brighton friendly between him and Timo Werner, I think was so exciting. I think the dimension of sort of attacking and creativity that we've lacked so far this season, I mean, that's been a complaint of some Chelsea fans in terms of our fluidity and chance creation sort of being inventive up there. And I think hopefully Ziyech will offer that with that left foot of his, which I think is going to cause teams a lot of problems. But it's exciting. Please let me know your opinions on Ziyech, his debut. How excited are you to see him star at Stamford Bridge this season? Please let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonofChelsea, and I'll see you again.